Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Underworld, or Wraiths, or Stygia, or the Shadowlands, Spectres, Shadows, Guilds, Hierarchy, Deathlords, Tempests, Far Shores. There's a lot going on in the Underworld. There is a lot more than you think. When you're alive, when you are up there, you probably think that when you die, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to end up in an afterlife that suits your faith, your religion, your culture, or there's just going to be the sweet kiss of oblivion, nothingness. At last, a break from all of this tragedy. That's true for some people, in a manner of speaking, but the others end up in the underworld. You know, there are these far shores out there in the underworld. We'll talk about them sometime at length. That roughly hew to the idea of an idealized afterlife, that if you have been virtuous, if you've maintained the beliefs and kept to the strictures of your faith, congratulations, you are due to this far shore, a glowing island where all of your wishes come true, you can be reunited with your loved ones, all will be well. There is also the possibility that you might end up in a far shore, some kind of torment that is related to your sins, the fact that you betrayed the virtues of your faith, the fact that you are a criminal and that your people hated you, and now you are forced to atone, maybe even for an eternity, before you can sail the tempest and get your just reward. Just reward versus just deserts. Those places exist. They are far, far away, hence far shores, and very few of the dead end up directly in a far shore. Most of the time they end up in the underworld, in Stygia, or in an necropolis, and it is from there they need to make their pilgrimage to the place that they deserve to be. And Oblivion is out there as well, of course, the fact that the vast majority of people, so far as we know, when they die in our world of darkness, nothing happens. They don't appear as a wraith. We have no idea of an actual utopic afterlife that they may have gone to, so they just end. Nothing but void. They are as they were before they were born. They just do not exist. But the underworld is between all of that. It makes up the great cradle that wraiths live, grow, and are possibly destroyed within. Hopefully they grow in a positive direction, but plenty grow towards the negative. It would be like a plant growing toward the darkness instead of the lights. If a wraith becomes a spectre, they've embraced the dark. If they grow towards the light, maybe there is hope for them beyond all of this grey. But in that grey, in Stygia, the great metropolis of the underworld, there are rulers. There is a society, they call it the hierarchy, and there are laws. You see, society doesn't change that much from death to undeath, or life to undeath. It calcifies, it grows more brutal. Oh yes, if you thought your life while among living was hard, just wait until you become someone living or existing in the underworld. Then you'll know what a hard life is truly like. Yes, in Stygia, things are not ideal, I'll grant you. It is not a utopia, not for anybody, not even for the ones on top. And it was one of my youngest striplings who came to me and said, "Gentlemen, I would love for you to talk to me about the Deathlords." The Deathlords are those wraiths that set the laws. They would claim maintain them, enforce them. I would argue they set them to their whims. And Deathlords have this reputation, much like the devil, you don't say his true name out loud, else he might manifest next to you and whisk you away. Well, the Deathlords don't do that. You can talk about them all you want. The Deathlords won't hear you directly, but one of their servants might. One of the best ways of thinking about Stygian society is to compare it a little like East Germany in the Cold War. You never know who might be listening, and the people listening may well be a part of the hierarchy. They may be a legionnaire in one of the Death Legions, and if they are, well, word may travel. about this Wraith over here who keeps meddling in guild business, has been seeing off many spectres, seems to be obsessed with maintaining his fetters, keeps talking about the Smiling Lord in an insulting way. We should pass a word back up the chain, and so that word does wend its way up to the top of the chain, the top of the hierarchy in Stygia, and eventually the Smiling Lord hears your name. You do not want the Smiling Lord to hear your name, because the Smiling Lord may, in a fit of boredom, decide, I'd like to meet this Wraith. And, of course, it's more likely the Smiling Lord will say, I don't want to meet this Wraith, you deal with him. You'll teach him to show some respect to my name. Now, we're not going to talk about the Smiling Lord in this video. Not really. Not because I'm afraid of him, though I'd be absolutely foolish to not be, but because there are too many Deathlords to cover off adequately in one video. Now, we will see if there is demand for me to cover more, but for you, Yaroslav, we will talk about the Ashen Lady, the Deathlord who commands the Iron Legion. Maybe the most populous of legions, certainly they would maintain so. They're one of the more visible of the legions that sprawl throughout Stygia and the various necropoli of the Underworld. Why? Well, the Iron Legion are those who died to war. They got caught up in a war. Maybe they were on the receiving end of an enemy bullet. Maybe they got hit by a drone attack while hunkering down. Maybe a shell hit the building that they were living in. Perhaps they fell to the vagaries of war. War deprived them and their family of food, of water, and eventually they just starved to death. Maybe they caught a disease as a result of war. Maybe the war grew too much psychologically and they took their own life. There are many ways for a war to end a life. But war also has a way of making people hang around. And this is one of those reasons the Iron Legion is so populous, because those who return as part of it, they all have that feeling. They all have that conflict raging inside them, that their death was unjust, they died serving a greater cause, or that a great enemy was threatening not just them, but their loved ones, their people, their society, and therefore now, in this second chance, if you want to think of it like that, they have another chance to pick up a rifle and fight back. Many of these wraiths, they will spend time in the Skinlands, haunting, tormenting, murdering the people that slew them and their people. They are vengeance writ large, if you like. And now this does step slightly on the territory of the Smiling Lord, even the Skeletal Lord, but the Ashen Lady holds a particular place when it comes to war. Andriana, which I understand was her name when she was alive, allegedly she was the leader of a very combative tribe of early Britons, if you can believe it. Whether she is the same Ashen Lady now as she is now, well, as she was then, that would be difficult to say, because all of the Deathlords wear masks. And these masks are more than just aesthetic. They are elaborate devices, part mechanical, part decorative. They obscure the identity of the person wearing them, sure, but it isn't just physical obfuscation. It is symbolic as well. The identity of the individual who becomes the Deathlord gets absorbed into the mask, and the mask ultimately becomes representative of the legion that they command. It is a philosophy. It's a dozen philosophies coagulated into one solid whole, and that is essentially what the Ashen Lady is at this point. She is representative of war, of conflict, of sacrifice, and keep that word in mind, sacrifice, because the Ashen Lady, while she could very easily be written off as a warmonger, as someone who exists only to perpetrate, well, clashes, battles, bloodshed, she is more about throwing yourself on the grenade to save the rest. At least that's how she'd like to style herself, you know? I like to think that the Ashen Lady is the most reasonable of the Deathlords, and I'm not suggesting any of them are the kind of wraiths you would invite round for tea, but she isn't a homicidal maniac. She isn't a manipulator in the same way many of the Deathlords are. She doesn't use her legions to crack down on Stygia's populace. Rather, she sends them out to war against spectres, the forces of Oblivion. And that is something I think we can all agree upon. That's a good way to, well, good reason to fight, even beyond death. You have to accept her premise that everything is war for her to grant you favour. And I don't just mean that everything is explosions and bullets and knife fights in the mud. She believes existence itself is a war, that everyone must fight to continue surviving, that if you have no fight left in you, then let Oblivion take you. You need to have the fight, the passion to keep going. And if you lack that, then, well, at that point, why persist? She can become an ally to anyone. You don't have to be a member of the Iron Legion to have her as an ally. You just need to accept the moral price that conflict is in your future and your past, and right now it's most definitely in your present. You need to fight right now. She's, I would say, a figure of discipline, cold patriotism. She is not a fanatic. Many in the Iron Legion are. They are a military machine. She, however, has a cold understanding of patriotism, of sacrifice. Where other Deathlords are often indulging in intrigue, the Ashen Lady, well, she embodies duty. She takes her role incredibly seriously. Her aesthetic of ashen armor, scorched regalia, it suggests war, it suggests the fireball, the all-consuming conflict, but there's more to her than this. And it's that word I mentioned earlier, sacrifice. You see, she believes sacrifice should ultimately consume all of us, because sacrifice is the only thing that's truly worth pursuing. But your sacrifice needs to be worthwhile, otherwise it's no true sacrifice. To the Ashen Lady, she believes that an individual should sacrifice their most necessary belongings, their fetters, in order to give themselves power. She believes that a wraith should sacrifice themselves to preserve their circle of wraiths. She believes that the circle of wraiths should sacrifice themselves to preserve society, that society should sacrifice itself to preserve existence. She is prepared to keep upping the stakes. In fact, she's not just prepared, she wants to up the stakes, because she believes that at some point the forces of Oblivion will break. Because the forces of Oblivion have no order. She has order. She embodies order. She can erase an entire necropolis. If she believes there is a Nile, some dread hollow, spawning the forces of Oblivion underneath it, better to wipe the entire Underworld city off the map. Yes, it's a sacrifice, but think of the poison we have rooted out by exposing it right now. She believes there's no higher calling. Again, this might sound like fanaticism. It isn't. It isn't. She's coldly rational. She believes this because she's done the calculations. For someone who was allegedly born in the Dark Ages, maybe even before, she has an intensely calculating mind. Now, I mentioned that allegedly she goes by the name, or went by the name, Andriana. Story goes that once upon a time, in not that recent memory, she challenged Charon, the greatest ferryman of all, on who was being delivered to the Underworld and who was being consigned to Oblivion. Story goes, she wanted even greater numbers of wraiths. She said there is a war coming. The next maelstrom will need more and more wraiths. It is time to stop wraiths falling through the gaps. If someone dies in the world of the living, they need to come here. She wanted her ranks bolstered, especially when she could see ahead of her the Great War, the Second World War, these huge conflicts that would consume hundreds of thousands, millions of dead, and she wanted so many of those dead for the Iron Legion. Hell, if she had got what she wanted, the Iron Legion would have absolutely dominated Stygia. Can you believe it? When you put the sheer number of war dead from the 20th century in one bracket compared to those killed by murder or even those killed by disease. Yes, the Spanish flu certainly did a number, but either way, Charon was apparently not very accommodating. No one knows exactly what he said to her in response, other than she fled terrified, meek, beaten down. No one had ever seen the Ashen Lady lose a conflict before, but the ferryman was somehow able to cow her. No one knows what he said, but there are plenty of rumours about what he said. There are plenty of rumours that he assured her it wasn't that she would need these forces. It was that when the sixth great maelstrom happened, there would be nothing left. It would all be scoured. That all of these sacrifices you have fought for centuries to perpetrate, to keep us going, it's all for nothing. Oblivion awaits us all, and here's your death clock. That's right, the story goes that Charon revealed to her that it was all pointless. All of the war, all of the conflict, all the territorial ambition, all the vengeance, all the blood feuds, all the sacrifices of lives, of societies, of cities, of peoples. And he showed her the Incas being massacred and enslaved by the Spaniards. Those poor Andean peoples being fed into the mountain that eats people. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions killed by a conquering Spanish. He showed her all of the people of Africa enslaved to work in South and Central and North America by the British, the French, the Spanish. And then, pointing east, he showed the pogroms of the Russians, the great leap forward of the Chinese, the nuclear bombs of the Second World War. He showed her all of that. And he said, I agree, there will be great conflict to come. But none of it serves a purpose in the end. You skip 2, 3, 4 generations ahead, they'll just repeat the same cycle. The sacrifices won't be out for anything, nothing. All those deaths, all those millions of people who died, it will achieve nothing. Mortals will never learn. Society will never right itself. You're right, conflict is everything. But conflict will never end, not until everything ends. And he showed her the end of everything. And he showed her that everything she fought for, everything she sacrificed, was for nothing. And since then, the Ashen Lady has been a lot quieter. She still pursues her wars. She still leads her legions. There are tales that she isn't the same Wraith behind the mask, but really, who can say? No one really knew Andriana before her becoming a Deathlord. But it does give question, at this point, if the rumours are true, who started them? And if they are true, why does she keep on fighting? Why does she keep pouring bodies into the meat grinder if it's all for nothing? Maybe she believes she can subvert the ferryman's prediction. Maybe she's just so consumed now with war that she knows nothing else. You know, the Ashen Lady issued a decree not long ago. The bells were rung from her tower, Whenever a decree is issued by the Ashen Lady, you hear the iron bells toll, and people look up and think, oh no, another war about to start. Which necropolis are we about to invade this time? Which spectres are we going to hunt down en masse? And then nothing emerged, just the bells tolling. Even the Iron Legion, its spokespeople, its heralds, were confused. Many, of course, visited the tower, tried to find out what was going on. The Ashen Lady would not say. She was locked away in her chamber and hasn't been seen since. Does this mean it was a call from her for war on the Iron Legion? That's how many are interpreting it. That if she would not give her own people the command to march, maybe she's giving the command to everyone else in Stygia to take out her own tower. Well, Yaroslav, I hope that has been informative and entertaining. The Ashen Lady is a tragic figure. All of the Deathlords are tragic figures, even the most psychotic among them. Those of you who want more videos on Wraith the Oblivion and the world of Wraith the Oblivion, please do pick up physical copies of The World Below and send me an email through matthewdawkins.com. If you buy yourself a physical copy of The World Below RPG, which is linked in the video description below, I will make a video for you of your request. It doesn't have to be Wraith, it could be any game, but I've enjoyed talking about Wraith, and I hope that more of you pick up The World Below, a fantastic RPG with a brilliant team on it that I was lucky enough to develop. Then get in touch with me via matthewdawkins.com and request a video of your choice. Thank you very much for watching.